The huge meeting hall of the Galactic Council was filled with strange sounds and smells. Hundreds of alien creatures sat in their special seats, each one different from the others. Some had tentacles that moved like snakes. Others had crystal bodies that made soft music when they moved. A few wore thick suits because they needed different air to breathe. In the center of the room stood 3 humans. They looked very small compared to the giant aliens around them. Captain Jake Sullivan was the leader of the human group. He was a tall man with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. Next to him stood Commander Lisa Hayes, a woman with short brown hair and a serious face. The third human was General Paul Carter, an older man with white hair who had fought in many battles. Jake looked around the room without showing any fear. He had been to this place many times before, but today felt different. Today, the aliens were not trying to be friendly. Their eyes were cold and angry. Some of them made low growling sounds. Others clicked their claws on the metal floor. At the front of the room, a large alien with purple skin and long tentacles stood up. This was Ambassador Zenthkar from the Valkyrie Empire. He was one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. His tentacles moved in circles as he spoke, which meant he was very angry. "Humans of Earth," he said in a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. "You have been called here to answer for your crimes against the peace of the galaxy." Jake did not move. He kept his face blank and his hands at his sides. Behind him, Lisa and Paul did the same. They had practiced this moment many times. They knew what was coming. "For 3 years, Zenthkar continued, the Council has watched your species spread across the stars like a disease. You build colonies without asking permission. You take resources that belong to others. You refuse to follow the laws that have kept peace in the galaxy for thousands of years." The alien's tentacles grew longer as he spoke. This was a sign that he was getting more angry. Other aliens in the room began to make noise. Some clicked their tongues. Others stamped their feet. A few even roared. "The Council has been patient with your young species," Zenthkar said. "We have tried to teach you the proper way to behave. We have sent teachers and guides. We have offered you friendship and protection. But you have thrown our gifts back." In our faces, Jake remembered those teachers and guides. They had come to Earth with smiles and kind words. But they had really come to spy on humans and learn their secrets. They had tried to make humans weak and dependent on alien technology. They had wanted to control everything humans did. "The time for patience is over," the alien ambassador announced. "The Council has decided you will stop building new colonies. Immediately, you will place all your settlements under Council supervision. You will accept Council governors on every human world. And you will give up your weapons and your warships." The room became very quiet. Even the aliens stopped making noise. Everyone waited to see what the humans would do. Most species would beg for mercy at this point. Others would try to make deals. A few might even cry. Jake took a step forward. His boots made a clear sound on the metal floor. He looked up at the giant alien and smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a wolf might make when it saw a rabbit. "No," Jake said. The word was short and simple, but it hit the room like a bomb. The aliens could not believe what they had heard. The small human had just said no to the most powerful organization in the galaxy. "What did you say?" Zenthkar demanded. His tentacles were now moving very fast, which meant he was shocked and angry at the same time. "I said no," Jake repeated. "We will not stop building colonies. We will not accept your governors. We will not give up our weapons. And we will not bow to your threats." The alien's purple skin began to turn red. This was a very bad sign. When a Valkyrie turned red, it meant they were ready to fight. "You dare refuse the Council?" Zenthkar shouted. "Do you know what you have done? Do you understand the power you are challenging?" Jake nodded slowly. "Yes, I do, and I'm not afraid of you." The room exploded in noise. Aliens jumped up from their seats and began shouting in their own languages. Some waved their arms or tentacles, others made threatening sounds. A few even started to move toward the humans, but Jake, Lisa, and Paul did not move. They stood perfectly still in the center of the chaos. They had known this would happen. They had prepared for this moment for years. Dr. Helen Brooks, Earth's expert on alien species, stepped forward from the back of the room. She was a small woman with blonde hair and glasses. She looked very calm as she walked through the angry crowd of aliens. "Ambassador," she said in a clear voice, "I think you need to understand something. We have been studying your species for many years. We know how you think. We know how you fight. And we know your weaknesses." This made the aliens even more angry. How dare these humans claim to know anything about them? They were the masters of the galaxy. They had ruled the stars for thousands of years while humans were still living in caves. "Your threats do not frighten us," Helen continued. "We have seen how you treat other species. We have watched you crush anyone who opposes you. We have learned from your mistakes." Xanthkar's tentacles stopped moving. This was more dangerous than when they were moving fast. It meant the alien was thinking hard about what to do next. "You think you are clever," he said in a quiet voice, "but you are just children playing with fire. The Council controls 97% of known space. Your species occupies less than 1%. You have a few dozen worlds while we have thousands. You have hundreds of ships while we have millions." Jake shrugged. "Numbers are not everything." "They are everything," Xanthkar screamed. "We could destroy your entire species with a single command. We could turn your worlds into dust. We could make your name disappear from history." "You could try," Jake said calmly. The alien ambassador stared at the human for a long moment. He was trying to understand what was happening. No species had ever spoken to the Council like this. No one had ever been so calm in the face of such threats. "This is your final warning," Xanthkar said. "Submit to the Council's will or face the consequences." Jake looked around the room at all the angry alien faces. He saw fear in their eyes, even though they were trying to hide it. They were afraid because they did not understand humans. They had expected begging and pleading. Instead, they had found defiance. "We reject your ultimatum," Jake said. "We reject your authority. And we reject your threats. Humanity will chart its own course among the stars." The human delegation turned and walked toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the suddenly quiet room. The aliens watched them go, unsure of what to do next. This had never happened before in the history of the Galactic Council. As the humans reached the door, Jake turned back one more time. "Oh, an ambassador," he said. "If you want to try to make us submit, you know where to find us." The door closed behind them with a soft sound. The aliens sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Then slowly they began to talk among themselves. Some were angry. Others were confused. A few were actually worried. High above the meeting hall, in the Council's command center, military leaders were already making plans. They would show these humans what happened when someone defied the Council. They would gather the largest fleet in galactic history and crush Earth's defiance once and for all. But in the back of their minds, a small voice whispered a troubling question. Why had the humans seemed so confident? What did they know that the Council did not? The answer to that question would soon shake the galaxy to its core. 3 months had passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Council meeting. During that time, the Council had been very busy. They gathered ships from every corner of the galaxy. They called in favors from old allies. They promised rewards to anyone who would help them crush the human rebellion. Now, the largest fleet in galactic history was moving toward Earth's solar system. Over 10,000 warships flew through space in perfect formation. The fleet was so big that it took hours for all the ships to pass through a single point. Each ship was filled with weapons and soldiers ready to fight. Admiral Kreshter commanded the fleet from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was a Valkyrie-like Ambassador Xanthkar, but much bigger and stronger. His purple skin was covered in scars from many battles. His tentacles were thick and powerful, capable of crushing a human skull. Kreshter stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars ahead. Soon he would see the yellow sun that warmed the human homeworld. Soon he would show these upstart Mammals, what happened when they defied the Council's will? Status report, he ordered his crew. We are approaching the outer edge of the human system, replied his navigation officer. All ships are in position. Weapons are charged and ready. Good, Crester said. Open a channel to the fleet? Thousands of alien faces appeared on screens throughout the bridge. These were the captains and commanders of the Council fleet. They represented dozens of different species, all united in their desire to crush humanity. Today we restore order. To the galaxy, Crester announced. The humans have forgotten their place. They think they can challenge the Council's authority. We will remind them of their mistake. The alien captains roared their approval. Some banged their fists on their DSKS. Others fired their weapons into empty space to show their eagerness for battle. Far ahead of the fleet, on a small moon orbiting a distant planet, Colonel Rick Johnson watched the approaching armada through his telescope. He was stationed at Luna Base, humanity's most important military outpost. The base was built inside an old crater, hidden from alien sensors. Next to him, Major Amy Davis tracked the alien ships on her computer screen. She was a small woman with red hair and quick hands. She had been watching alien fleet movements for weeks, waiting for this moment. They're coming in fast, she reported. 10,000 ships, maybe more. They're not even trying to hide. Rick nodded. The aliens were confident, maybe too confident. They thought this would be easy. They expected humans to panic when they saw such a large fleet. They expected surrender messages and pleas for mercy. Any word from Admiral Morgan? Rick asked. She's ready, Amy replied. All ships are in position. Admiral Kate Morgan commanded the human fleet from her ship, the Defiance. She was an older woman with gray hair and steel blue eyes. She had spent her whole life in the military, fighting pirates and protecting human colonies. But she had never faced anything like this. The Defiance was not as big as the alien flagship. It was not as pretty or as advanced, but it was strong and fast, built for fighting rather than showing off. Around it, hundreds of other human ships waited in the darkness of space. Admiral, her communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. Put it on screen, Kate ordered. The bridge filled with the image of Admiral Crester. His tentacles moved slowly, which meant he was feeling very sure of himself. His eyes were dark and cold as he stared at the human admiral. I am Admiral Crester of the Galactic Council fleet, he announced. You are Admiral Morgan of the human rebels. I offer you one chance to surrender peacefully. Kate looked at him without blinking. I'm listening. Order your ships to power down their weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your leaders will be taken to the Council for judgment. Your people will be relocated to worlds where they can be properly supervised. If you comply, no harm will come to your soldiers. Kate almost smiled. The alien thought he was being generous. He thought he was offering humans a good deal. He did not understand that humans would rather die than live as slaves. Counteroffer, Kate said. Turn your ships around and leave our space immediately. If you do that, we won't destroy you all. Crester's tentacles began to move faster. He was getting angry. You dare to threaten me? I command 10,000 ships. You have barely 300. My fleet could crush yours without breaking formation. Numbers aren't everything, Kate replied. But you're about to learn that lesson the hard way. The alien admiral's face disappeared from the screen. A moment later, the Council fleet began to move forward. They came in waves, thousands of ships spreading out to surround the human force. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy. Their shields shimmered like soap bubbles in the starlight. All ships, Kate announced over the fleet communication system. This is it. Remember your training, trust your equipment, and show these aliens what humans are made of. The first wave of alien ships crossed into the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. They moved slowly, scanning for human ships and weapons. They expected to find the human fleet waiting for them in a straight line, ready for an old-fashioned battle. Instead, they found empty space. Where are they? Demanded Captain Vexton, commander of the alien vanguard. His ship's sensors showed nothing but floating rocks and space dust. "Scanning," his officer replied. "No ships detected." "No energy signatures? Nothing." That was when the first ship disappeared. The alien vessel was there one moment, flying in perfect formation with its squadron. The next moment, it was gone. No explosion, no debris, no distress signal. Just empty space where a warship had been. "Report!" Vexton shouted. "Unknown, sir." "The ship just vanished from our sensors." "We're not detecting any weapons fire or another ship disappeared?" Then another. Within minutes, a dozen vessels had vanished without a trace. The alien formation began to break apart as captains tried to figure out what was happening. "All ships." "Defensive positions," Crester ordered from his flagship. "Activate full shields, weapons to maximum power." But it did not help. The disappearances continued. Ships would be flying normally 1 second, then simply cease to exist the next. The aliens began to panic. They fired their weapons at empty space, hoping to hit whatever was destroying their fleet back on Luna Base. Colonel Rick Johnson watched the chaos through his telescope. He could see the alien ships spinning in circles, firing at nothing. Their perfect formation had become a scattered mess of confused and frightened vessels. "Phase 1 complete," he reported to Admiral Morgan. "The ghosts are doing their job." The ghosts were humanity's secret weapon. They were small ships, barely larger than a fighter, but equipped with the most advanced stealth technology humans had ever built. They could not be seen by alien sensors. They could not be tracked by alien computers. They were invisible hunters, striking without warning. Each ghost ship was commanded by a single pilot. These were the best fighters humanity had ever produced. They flew their ships through the alien fleet like sharks through a school of fish, picking off targets one by one. Lieutenant Commander Tony Blake piloted Ghost 7 through the alien formation. His ship was so small and quiet that he could fly right next to an alien warship without being detected. He picked his targets carefully, aiming for the largest and most dangerous vessels. "Ghost 7 to base," he whispered into his radio. "Target acquired. Big, ugly cruiser looks important." "Confirmed, Ghost 7. Take it out." Tony's ship fired a single torpedo. The weapon was small but extremely powerful. It punched through the alien ship's shields like they were made of paper. The cruiser exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen for thousands of miles. All around him, other ghost ships were doing the same thing. They struck fast and hard, then disappeared back into the darkness. The aliens never saw them coming. They never knew what hit them. Within hours, the mighty Council fleet was in full retreat. Nearly half their ships had been destroyed or damaged. The rest were scattered across the solar system, too frightened to fight effectively. Admiral Crester sat in his command chair, staring at the reports from his surviving captains. This was impossible. His fleet was supposed to be invincible. How could primitive humans have defeated the greatest military force in galactic history? "Sir," his communications officer called out. "We're receiving a message from the human admiral." Kate Morgan's face appeared on the screen again. She looked exactly the same as before, calm and confident. Behind her, the bridge of the Defiance hummed with quiet activity. "Admiral Crester," she said, "I believe I made you an offer earlier. The offer is still open, but not for much longer." Crester's tentacles writhed with rage and humiliation. "This is not over, human. The Council will not forget this defeat." "I'm counting on it," Kate replied. "The next time you come to human space, we'll be ready for you. And next time, we won't be so gentle." The transmission ended. Crester sat in silence for a long moment, then gave the order his crew had been dreading. "All ships, retreat to the outer system. We will regroup and await further orders." The surviving Council ships began to pull back, leaving behind the wreckage of their once mighty fleet. They had come to crush humanity's rebellion. Instead, they had learned a hard lesson about underestimating their enemies. In the darkness of space, the ghost ships continued their patrol. The news of the fleet's defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, emergency meetings were called. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss what had happened. How could the humans have destroyed such a powerful force so easily? Ambassador Zenthkar paced back and forth in his private chambers. His tentacles moved in angry circles as he spoke to his assistants. The defeat was more than just a military loss. It was a humiliation that would be remembered for generations. Find out everything you can about human technology, he ordered. I want to know how they made our ships disappear. I want to know how they defeated our best weapons. And I want to know how they did it without losing a single ship of their own. His assistants bowed and hurried away. They would contact spies and informants throughout the galaxy. They would study every piece of information about human capabilities. They would find the secret behind humanity's victory, but they would not have to wait long for answers. 3 days after the battle, every communication system in Council space received the same signal. It came from an unknown source, broadcast on all frequencies at once. The message was simple: emergency transmission for all Council members. This is Dr. Marcus Webb of Earth. You need to see this. On worlds throughout the galaxy, aliens gathered around their screens to watch. They expected to see a human leader making threats or demands. Instead, they saw something that made their blood run cold. Dr. Marcus Webb stood in what was clearly the command center of a Council warship. Behind him, the walls were covered with alien writing and symbols. Computer screens showed star charts and battle plans. And working at the control panels were humans. Marcus was a tall man with dark hair and sharp eyes. He wore the uniform of Earth's Scientific Division, but his expression was that of a soldier who had won a great victory. Next to him stood Commander Steve Palmer, a stocky man with gray hair who had fought in many battles. At the weapons console, Lieutenant Nicole Sanders worked with practiced skill, her fingers dancing across alien controls. Greetings, citizens of the galaxy, Marcus began. I'm broadcasting from the bridge of the Valkyrie cruiser Crimson Fang, as you can see. This ship is now under human control. The aliens watching could not believe their eyes. How had humans captured a Council warship? How did they know how to operate alien technology? The questions multiplied with each passing second. You've been wondering how we defeated your fleet. Marcus continued. The answer is simple. We've been preparing for this moment for over 50 years. Every piece of technology you shared with us, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic visit, we've been learning. He gestured to the screens behind him. They showed detailed plans of alien ships, complete with weaknesses and vulnerabilities. There were star charts marking the location of every Council military base. There were communication codes that would allow access to the most secret alien networks. Your mistake, Marcus said, was thinking that humans were primitive. You saw our crude ships and basic weapons, and you assumed we were stupid. But we're not stupid. We're survivors. And survivors learn from their enemies. Commander Palmer stepped forward. For decades, your diplomats visited our worlds. They thought they were teaching us about galactic civilization. In reality, they were showing us how to defeat you. The truth was devastating. Every alien who had ever visited Earth, every teacher and guide and cultural expert, had unknowingly given humans vital information. They had revealed the location of military bases, the capabilities of weapons systems, the weaknesses of alien technology. Your stealth systems, Marcus explained, work by bending light around your ships, but the energy field required to do. This creates a unique signature that can be detected if you know what to look for. We learned how to spot that signature. On the screen, he showed a recording from the recent battle. The alien ships appeared to be invisible, but human sensors could clearly see them. The ghost ships had used this information to hunt down their prey with deadly efficiency. Your shields, he continued, operate on rotating frequencies to prevent enemy weapons from adapting. But there's always a split second between frequency changes where the shield is vulnerable. We learned to time our attacks perfectly. More footage showed human torpedoes slipping through alien shields at exactly the right moment. The aliens had thought their defenses were perfect. They had been wrong. Lieutenant Sanders spoke up from her position at the weapons console. Your communication? Systems all connect to a central network. Every ship, every base, every government building. We've been listening to your conversations for 20 years. The implications were staggering. Every military plan, every secret meeting, every private conversation had been monitored by human intelligence. The Council had no secrets from their enemies. But that's not the worst part, Marcus said with a cold smile. The worst part is that we didn't just learn your technology, we improved it. Behind him, the screens showed human versions of alien weapons. They were smaller, faster, and more powerful than anything the Council had ever built. Human stealth technology was so advanced that even human sensors had trouble detecting it. Human shields could stop weapons that would destroy alien vessels. You see, Marcus explained, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. Not against aliens, but against each other. We understand conflict in ways you never could. We know how to adapt, how to improve, how to overcome any obstacle. The broadcast showed images of human weapons factories hidden throughout the galaxy. Automated shipyards built new vessels at incredible speed. Research stations developed new technologies that surpassed anything the Council had ever imagined. While you were ruling the galaxy, Marcus continued, we were preparing to free it. Every human colony was a potential military base. Every trade mission was a chance to gather intelligence. Every diplomatic meeting was an opportunity to learn your weaknesses. Commander Palmer moved to another control panel. We know everything about you. We know which species support the Council and which ones hate it. We know which worlds are loyal and which ones are ready to rebel. We know your supply lines, your trade routes, your military strategies. The aliens watching the broadcast began to understand the true scope of human preparation. This had not been a sudden rebellion. It had been a carefully planned campaign. That had taken decades to organize. Your fleet came to Earth expecting to fight primitive humans with basic weapons, Marcus said. Instead, you faced an enemy that knew your every move before you made it. You brought 10,000 ships to fight 300. But those 300 ships were better than anything you had. On the screen, he showed the specifications of human warships. They were small compared to alien vessels, but they were incredibly advanced. Their weapons could punch through any shield. Their armor could withstand any attack. Their speed and maneuverability made them nearly impossible to hit. The battle was over before it began, Lieutenant Sanders added. Your sensors couldn't detect our ships. Your weapons couldn't track our movements. Your shields couldn't stop our attacks. You were fighting blind against an enemy that could see everything. Marcus walked closer to the camera. His expression was serious now, no longer smiling. This is what happens when you underestimate humans. We don't just fight to win, we fight to survive. And we will do whatever it takes to protect our freedom. The broadcast showed more human installations throughout the galaxy. Hidden bases on remote asteroids, weapon caches on seemingly uninhabited worlds, communication networks that connected every human settlement. For 50 years, you thought you were the masters of the galaxy, Marcus said. In reality, you were teaching your replacements how to defeat you. Every day, we grew stronger while you grew more complacent. Commander Palmer stepped forward again. Your council controls most of the galaxy through fear and intimidation. But fear only works if your enemies believe you're stronger than they are. Today you learn that you're not. The screens behind them showed the current state of the Council fleet. Thousands of ships fleeing in panic. Damaged vessels limping back to their home bases. Commanders sending desperate messages to their governments. This is just the beginning, Marcus announced. We've shown you that we can defeat your military. Now we're going to show you that we can defeat your empire. The broadcast ended with a final message that appeared on every screen in Council space. To all species under Council rule, freedom is coming. The age of alien domination is over. Humanity has shown that the Council can be beaten. Now it's time for you to choose your side. The transmission cut off, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. In the Council chambers, representatives stared at their screens in shock. They had thought they were dealing with a minor rebellion. Instead, they had discovered that their entire civilization was under threat. The humans had not just defeated the Council fleet. They had revealed that they had been preparing for this war for decades. They had shown that they understood alien technology better than the aliens themselves. And they had proven that the mighty Galactic Council was not invincible. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of human dominance had begun. The Galactic Council's response to Dr. Webb's broadcast was swift and brutal. If they could not defeat humanity with weapons, they would destroy them with economics and isolation. Within days, every trade route to human space was closed. Every diplomatic relationship was severed. Any species that continued to deal with humans would face severe punishment. The plan was simple and had worked many times before. Cut off a rebellious species from the rest of the galaxy. Make their people suffer from lack of food, medicine, and supplies. Watch as their colonies starved and their civilization crumbled. Eventually, they would surrender just to save their children. The first target was New Austin, a human colony on the edge of Council space. The settlement was home to 10,000 people who had spent years building farms and factories on a distant world. They grew food for other human colonies and manufactured equipment for mining operations. Governor Linda Ross received the bad news on a cold morning in the colony's capital city. She was a strong woman with brown hair who had led the colony for 5 years. She had helped the people survive storms, crop failures, and alien diseases, but this was different. "All supply ships have been turned away," reported her aide, Captain Tim Bradley. "The Council has threatened to arrest any alien captain who trades with us. Our food reserves will last maybe 3 months." Linda looked out the window at the busy streets of New Austin. People were going to work, children were playing in the parks, and farmers were tending their crops. They had no idea that their world was about to be cut off from the rest of the galaxy. "What about the other colonies?" she asked. "Same story. Everywhere, the Council has blockaded all human space. No ships in, no ships out. They're trying to starve us into submission." Linda nodded grimly. She had expected this. The Council always used the same tactics when dealing with rebellious species. They would make the people suffer until their leaders had no choice but to surrender. But Linda also knew something the Council did not. Humanity had been preparing for this moment just as carefully as they had prepared for the military attack. Dr. Aaron Hayes had been working on a secret project for years, building relationships with species that hated Council rule. 3 weeks after the blockade began, Linda was standing in the colony's spaceport when she saw something that made her smile. A long line of ships was approaching New Austin, flying flags that she barely recognized. These were not Council vessels or human ships. They were something else entirely. The first ship to land was painted in bright green and gold colors. Strange symbols covered its hull, and it moved with a grace that human ships could not match. As the cargo door opened, Linda saw creatures she had only read about in alien guidebooks. Captain Ben Turner walked down the loading ramp with a wide grin on his face. He was a veteran smuggler who had spent years moving cargo through the most dangerous parts of the galaxy. Behind him came a group of aliens unlike anything the Council had ever seen. "Governor Ross," Ben said with a bow, "allow me to introduce Ambassador Victor of the Korathi Republic." The alien was tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms. His people had been enslaved by the Council for over a century, forced to work in mines and factories while their homeworld was stripped of its resources. Now they stood as free beings, ready to help humanity fight their former masters. "We bring supplies and friendship," Victor said in heavily accented English. "The Council told us you were evil warmongers. They lied to us, as they lie about everything." Behind him came more aliens. The Zenthians looked like giant birds with colorful feathers and sharp beaks. The Altarians resembled walking trees with bark-like skin and branches for arms. The Kithara were small and furry, like teddy bears with intelligent eyes and clever hands. All of these species had one thing in common: they hated the Galactic Council. How is this possible? Linda asked Ben as they watched the aliens unload supplies from their ships. Simple, Ben replied. While the Council was building their blockade, Dr. Hayes was building something better. An alliance of free species who are tired of being pushed around. The truth was even more impressive than Linda had imagined. For months, human diplomats had been secretly meeting with representatives from dozens of minor species. They offered them something the Council never could: partnership instead of slavery, freedom instead of control, and protection against Council. Retaliation. Dr. Aaron Hayes had orchestrated the entire operation from a hidden base in the outer colonies. He was a quiet man with gray hair and kind eyes who had spent his life studying alien cultures. But beneath his gentle appearance was a mind that understood politics and warfare better than most generals. Working with Ambassador Claire Roberts and General Frank Davis, he had identified every species in the galaxy that had reasons to hate. The Council, some had been conquered and enslaved. Others had been forced to give up their resources and technology. A few had simply been ignored and dismissed as unimportant. The Council's biggest mistake, Aaron explained in a message to human colonies throughout the galaxy, was thinking that only big, powerful species mattered. They ignored the small ones, treated them like servants, and assumed they would never fight back. But the small species had been watching humanity's rebellion with great interest. They saw humans defeat the Council fleet and broadcast their victory to the entire galaxy. They realized that the mighty Council could be beaten if enough species worked together. The liberation of New Austin was just the beginning. Within weeks, similar convoys were arriving at human colonies throughout the galaxy. The Karathi brought food and medicine. The Zenthians provided raw materials for manufacturing. The Altarians shared their knowledge of advanced agriculture. In return, humans offered them something invaluable: military protection and advanced technology. Colonel Janet Mitchell commanded the defense of New Austin when the Council finally responded to the blockade runners. She was a career soldier who had fought pirates and raiders for most of her adult life. But she had never seen anything like the fleet that approached her world. 12 Council cruisers coming in fast, reported her sensor operator. They're demanding that all non-human ships surrender immediately. Janet looked at the mixed fleet defending New Austin. There were human destroyers, Karathi fighters, and Zenthian patrol boats. None of them were individually powerful enough to face a Council cruiser, but together they were something new and dangerous. All ships, this is Colonel Mitchell. Remember your training. Trust your allies, and show these bullies what freedom looks like. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Council ships expected to face frightened rebels and primitive aliens. Instead, they encountered a coordinated force that fought with human tactics and alien determination. The Karathi fighters were small and fast, dancing around the big Council ships like insects around a giant. They carried human-designed weapons that could punch through enemy shields. The Zenthian patrol boats used their natural flying ability to attack from unexpected angles, and coordinating everything were the human ships, their advanced sensors, and communication systems allowing the mixed fleet to fight as one unified force. Within hours, half the Council fleet was destroyed or disabled. The rest retreated, sending panicked messages to their commanders. The blockade of New Austin had failed completely, but the real victory was not military, it was political. News of the battle spread throughout the galaxy, carried by the same communication networks that the Council used to maintain control. Species that had been oppressed for centuries suddenly realized that they were not alone. The Valdris Confederacy declared independence from Council rule. The Nexari Trade Union cut all ties with Council merchants. The Zephyrian Crystal Cities announced that they would no longer provide the rare minerals that powered Council technology. Each defection made the Council weaker and the human alliance stronger. Species that had been enemies for generations found themselves working together against their common oppressor. The galaxy was experiencing something it had not seen for thousands of years: hope. In the Council chambers, emergency sessions were called every day. Representatives who had once been confident and arrogant now spoke in worried whispers. Their mighty empire was crumbling, and they did not know how to stop it. Ambassador Zenthkar stood before the assembled delegates, his tentacles moving in patterns of fear and desperation. "We must act quickly," he declared. "Every day that passes, more species join the human alliance. Soon we will be outnumbered," but it was already too late. The Human Liberation Alliance, as it came to be known, was growing faster than the Council could respond. What had started as a rebellion by one species had become a galactic revolution. Captain Ben Turner piloted his ship through the busy space lanes around New Austin, watching the constant stream of vessels arriving from across the galaxy. Aliens, who had never seen each other before, were working side by side, building something that had never existed before, a truly free galactic civilization. "You know what the best part is?" he said to his co-pilot, a young Karathi named Jakvin. "The Council created this alliance by trying to destroy it. Their own actions turned a human rebellion into a galactic revolution." Jakvin's forearms moved. In what humans had learned was a gesture of amusement among his people. 1 year had passed since Captain Jake Sullivan walked out of the Galactic Council meeting. The galaxy that existed now was completely different from the one that had tried to crush humanity's spirit. The mighty council that had ruled for thousands of years was broken into scattered pieces, while something new and hopeful had taken its place. President Daniel Clark stood at the podium in the main hall of New Geneva Station, humanity's newest and most important space station. The massive structure floated in neutral space, far from any single world or system. It had been built by dozens of species working together, each contributing their best technology and skills. Daniel was a tall man with kind eyes and graying hair who had spent his life fighting for human rights. Now he found himself leading not just humanity, but a coalition of free species that had never existed before in galactic history. Before him sat representatives from 47 different species. There were the blue-skinned Karathi with their 4 arms, the bird-like Zenthians with their colorful feathers, and the tree-like Altarians whose bark skin gleamed under the station's lights. But there were also species that most humans had never seen before, the crystalline Vorthak, the gaseous ethereals, and the mechanical Syndhoids. Each of these species had their own story of oppression under Council rule. Each had their own reasons for joining the Human Liberation Alliance, and each now had an equal voice in deciding the future of the galaxy. "Friends," Daniel began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's translation systems, "we gather today not as conquerors but as liberators. We did not seek this war, but we chose to fight when freedom was threatened. We did not want to rule the galaxy, but we refused to let tyranny continue." The assembled delegates listened carefully. Many of them still found it hard to believe that they were truly free. For generations, their species had been told what to do, where to live, and how to think. The idea that they could make their own decisions was still new and frightening. Admiral Patricia Ross, the woman who had taken over fleet command after the great victory at Earth, stood to give her report. She was a stern woman with short black hair who had earned the respect of every species in the Alliance through her fair treatment and tactical brilliance. "The Council's military forces have withdrawn to their core territories," she announced. "The Velkari Empire has lost control of over 60% of its former colonies. The Zephyrian crystal cities have gone completely silent, cutting all communication with the outside galaxy. Even the Arctilians, who controlled galactic trade for centuries, are seeking peaceful agreements with our alliance." This news brought murmurs of satisfaction from the delegates. The Arctilians were masters of commerce and banking who had grown rich by controlling trade routes throughout the galaxy. If they were seeking peace, it meant they recognized that the old order was truly dead, that the most important victory was not military or economic. It was ideological. Commander Troy Bennett, who had led the peaceful occupation of the former Council headquarters, had discovered archives that changed everything. Troy was a young man with red hair and freckles who had specialized in alien computer systems. When Alliance forces captured the Council's main data center, he had spent months digging through thousands of years of records. What he found there shocked even the humans who thought they understood how evil the Council had been. The records go back over 5,000 years, Troy reported to the assembled delegates. They show a systematic pattern of oppression, cultural destruction, and technological suppression that affected every species in the galaxy. Dr. Sandra Lewis, the Alliance's chief historian, stepped forward to explain the findings. She was a small woman with blonde hair and thick glasses who had devoted her life to studying alien cultures. Now, she had uncovered the truth about how those cultures had been deliberately destroyed. The Council didn't just want to control other species, she said. They wanted to prevent the entire galaxy from advancing. They saw progress as a threat to their power, so they actively worked to keep everyone else primitive and dependent. The evidence was overwhelming. The Council had deliberately introduced diseases to slow population growth on conquered worlds. They had stolen the best scientists and engineers from subject species, leaving those worlds unable to develop new technology. They had even rewritten history books to make conquered peoples believe they had always been inferior. They told the Korathi that they were naturally suited to be miners and factory workers, Sandra continued. They convinced the Zenthians that their flying ability made them good only as messengers and scouts. They made every species believe that they were lucky to be ruled by their superiors. But the archives revealed something even more disturbing. The Council had been planning to do the same thing to humanity. Documents showed detailed plans for breaking up human colonies, relocating populations to different worlds, and gradually erasing human culture and independence. They were going to turn us into just another subject species, Sandra explained. Within a few generations, humans would have forgotten that we ever had our own governments or made our own decisions. We would have become grateful servants, just like all the others. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Alliance. Many species realized for the first time how close they had come to losing everything that made them unique. The Council's defeat had not just freed them from oppression. It had saved them from complete cultural extinction. General Frank Davis, one of the architects of the Alliance's military strategy, stood to address a more practical concern. He was an older man with white hair and a scarred face who had fought in more battles than he could count. The question now, he said, is what kind of galaxy we want to build. We've proven that the Council's way was wrong, but we need to show that our way is better. This was the real challenge facing the Galactic Congress, as the new organization had come to be called. It was easy to tear down an old system. It was much harder to build a new one that actually worked. The Congress operated on principles that were revolutionary in galactic terms. Every member species, no matter how small or primitive, had an equal vote. Decisions were made by consensus rather than force. Trade was based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. Captain Ben Turner, who had become the Alliance's chief trade coordinator, reported on the economic progress. Free trade between Alliance worlds has increased by 300%. In the past 6 months, he announced, species that were never allowed to trade with each other are now sharing technology and resources. The results were remarkable. The Korathi, freed from their role as forced laborers, turned out to be brilliant engineers who quickly improved on human ship designs. The Zenthians, no longer restricted to messenger duties, revealed an advanced understanding of physics that helped create new forms of faster-than-light travel. Even the smallest species contributed in ways that surprised everyone. The furry Kithra, who had been dismissed as cute but useless pets by the Council, turned out to have an incredible ability to solve complex mathematical problems. The insect-like Vexti possessed a hive mind that could process information faster than any computer. Ambassador Claire Roberts, who had helped negotiate many of the Alliance agreements, spoke about the cultural changes taking place throughout Alliance space. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who had spent years learning alien languages and customs. For the first time in thousands of years, she said, species are free to develop their own cultures without interference. Art, music, literature, and philosophy are flourishing on worlds that have been culturally suppressed for generations. This cultural renaissance was perhaps the most beautiful result of the Alliance's victory. Karathi music, with its complex harmonies created by their four-armed musicians, was being heard throughout the galaxy. Xanthian poetry, written in flight patterns that traced beautiful designs in the sky, was inspiring artists of every species, but the humans' greatest achievement was not military or cultural. It was the simple act of proving that a better way was possible. Marshal Jake Sullivan, promoted from his old rank of captain, stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station as the Congress session ended. Through the massive windows he could see ships from dozens of species coming and going in peaceful traffic. Trade vessels carried goods between worlds that had been enemies for centuries. Passenger ships brought beings together who were learning to be friends. "Hard to believe it's only been a year," said Commander Lisa Hayes, who had stood beside him in that first confrontation with the Council. Jake nodded. "Sometimes the most important changes happen quickly. People just need someone to show them that change is possible." The stars beyond the station looked different now. Where once they had been dominated by fear and oppression, they now represented hope and possibility. Every light in the sky was a world where beings were free to choose their own destiny. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still problems to solve, conflicts to resolve, and former Council loyalists who refused to accept the new order. But for the first time in thousands of years, those problems would be solved through cooperation rather than conquest. Humanity had not just survived the Council's ultimatum, they had transformed an entire galaxy. And in doing so,